Hi everyone, back to Ever More YouTube channel. It's Chris back with the aftermath. This is the show we do when the dust has settled from Newcastle United's previous game, which happened to be almost the inevitable defeat down at the Amex Stadium against Brighton, when Newcastle lost 2-1. And some worrying signs really where the way Newcastle played. Lack of creativity, lack of belief, lack of aggression. I'm going to get right into this and talk about this right now for you. If it's the kind of thing you guys like, subscribe, smash the button below, help us get to 12,000. We're about 300 or 290 something away from it. So help us get there, guys. We've got a great prize for 12k, so get us there as quick as we can. But let's get into the game. So the biggest issue I have with the game yesterday was the team selection, I would say. Now, I'm not going to start moaning about Burn at left back before anyone starts in the comments. There's no other option at left back right now. I didn't actually think Burn did that bad. There was times where Minter did embarrass him a little bit, went around him, looked like a dad trying to chase a kid at five-a-side, get nowhere near. But by and large, he kind of kept Minter out of influencing the game massively. There was a couple of moments where he had flashes, but he didn't massively influence the game. So I'll give Dan Burn some credit in that regard. But some of the players yesterday, shocking performances really in many ways. And I think part of that was down to fatigue from the international break and the levels of distances travelled. Joelinton in particular. I don't know why Joelinton started this game. It was in the news prior that he flew, was it 30 hours over to the Far East to play for Brazil. Bit of a fuck up on flights and things like that. And he looked like a lad who literally landed 10 minutes ago and got his bags through check-in. He was absolutely shite in the first half. Passing was wayward. Passed to Brighton players more he did Newcastle players in his own half. Didn't really get involved, didn't get aggressive, didn't get on the, tackle, didn't win the ball back. His ball retention is pretty poor. And I'm going to get into Joelinton a little bit more in a second, but that was a big problem. Anthony Elanga, another anonymous, invisible performance by Elanga. Now, I will caveat this a little bit. Is the lad devoid of confidence, or is our midfield just so flat that they can't get him into the game? I'll get into this as well in a second. I've got plenty to talk about today on the aftermath. But there were some bad decisions made there. I don't understand why Jacob Murphy and Lewis Miley didn't start the game. I know Lewis Miley pulled out the under-21s and apparently hadn't trained for 2 weeks, said Eddie Howe. Sure looked sharp me when he come on, to be fair. And I'll get into Miley in a second as well, in a lot of detail. But there was bad decisions made by Eddie Howe there. I think picking those players who were fatigued like that against an energetic, younger, hungrier side in Brighton, I think it was almost always going to go one way. But we started Brighton, faded away, then they took control of the game. Then the changes came in the second half with a bit more positivity. And then we went 1-1, a great flick from Big Nick Voldemar, a lovely goal. Yes, he meant it. Anyone that says otherwise is an idiot or a Mackham. Of course he meant it. It was a brilliant finish by the big German, who was pretty much starved of service all day long. Gordon tried to make things happen, but again, with a winger, you live and die on your assists and your goal involvements. He didn't really have any of them, so that's something that he has to look at. Elanga, like I say, anonymous in the game, really hooked at half-time. And overall, just some stupid mistakes, really. I think the first goal from Danny fucking Welbeck, who appears to be invisible against Newcastle. I'm sure he's got Harry Potter's cloak of invisibility, and these fuckers just can't see him run through the middle of them. So good finish for the first one, terrible marking. And on the second goal, the winning goal, I don't think Dan Burn has to make that challenge. I don't think he has to come across to win that challenge. I think he's frustrated, he's wound up, he's having a difficult game. He's went back in his natural position of centre-half. He stood on Botman's toes. Had Dan Burn shouted that he was coming back, maybe Botman could have stepped out and closed Welbeck on the edge of the box and prevented the goal from going in. But it was a mess, a category of errors, and that's how we lost the game. But going back to this situation now, Chow and Botman have been excellent. I'm not going to do them over for this game. Really bad marking in the first game. They turned to the Chuckle Brothers to meet you. Nobody picked up Welbeck and nobody stepped out to close him on the edge of the box. But also Harvey Barnes, I think, doesn't track the runner. That's not Harvey Barnes' game. Harvey Barnes is lazy when it comes to tracking back. That's a fact, and he didn't do that. And Welbeck gets a relatively easy goal. Could Pub have done better? Yeah, I think he could have done. And we lose the game. And on the fair balance of it, you probably say we probably deserve to lose the game. I know there was a penalty shout in the middle, but it's very hard to get them, especially when the referee's Craig Pawson as well. You're probably not going to get them. But going back to the big issue here for me, and it isn't just the Brighton game. It's highlighted with how fatigued and poor the midfield three were. But I've been talking about this for a long time. I've been talking about it on our channel. I've been talking about it on True Faith when I do bits for them as well. The midfield for me right now is in a state of evolution. Now, we made a mistake with Elliot Anderson leaving the football club. We knew it was PSR driven, and if we hadn't sold him, we would have been in the shit, right? But we made a mistake by not playing Elliot Anderson more. You know, Joelinton's injuries gave him more game time. He showed what he could do, and then we sold him and put faith in Joelinton. I'm not saying we should have sold Joelinton by any stretch of the imagination, right? But something's not right with Joelinton. Something's not right. He doesn't look the same player that he has over the last couple of years. Maybe the injuries have taken a toll. He looks like he's lost a bit of edge. He's lost a bit of pace. He's lost something that makes Joelinton. But more importantly than not, Newcastle have evolved as a team. Newcastle are now a team that's qualifying for Champions League and winning trophies. Newcastle are no longer that team that other teams say, right, come on, we'll go and fucking press against these guys. We'll be right in their faces. We can beat them. These are shit. Newcastle are now a team where managers go, actually, hang on a minute. You know, they've got Bruno Guimaraes can get the ball, Sandro Tonali, they've got Gordon's pace out wide, Murphy, you know, obviously Isaac previously, now Voltemada. These teams now sit back and say, well, come on, Newcastle, what you got? And that's where Joelinton is no use to man or beast in that game. His ball retention is awful. His decision-making with his passing is equally awful as well. He does not look after the ball or recycle the ball well enough at all. Lewis Miley is 19 years old and has way better ball retention skills and passing ability than Joelinton will arguably ever have in his career. It's just not his game. When Lewis Miley come onto that pitch with Sandro Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes, it didn't just settle it down. It didn't just give us more control of the ball. What it also did was unlock Bruno Guimaraes to become what he is, which is possibly Newcastle's best creative outlet in that squad right now. He's doing it for Brazil. We saw it in national duty. He put a lovely ball through round the corner for a Brazil goal. He can do that for Newcastle. He has done that for Newcastle. But when Joelinton plays, Joelinton's kind of trapped between an 8 and a 6. He's pushing forward to try and do something in the attacking third. Then he's running back to try and tackle somebody. He doesn't quite know where to be. And that prevents Bruno from being that forward attacking midfield player, which we know he can be. When we're playing against a team that cedes possession to us, that Brighton did for a large part of that game, if we have Lewis Miley and Sandro Tonali in almost a double pivot 6, it allows Bruno Guimaraes to get involved, get into the box and try and make something happen. He did that yesterday. He had a nice shot saved by Verbruggen that could have easily felt the Voltemada and got us a goal. That's where we need to see Bruno Guimaraes more. We need to see him in and around Nick Voltemada, because for some reason the wingers aren't reading this guy's game either. When Nick Voltemada drops deep and wins that ball, he's going to be able to hold the centre-half off, twist him and put a ball down the side channel. Gordon should be on his fucking bike. Elanga should be on his fucking bike. And neither one of them are doing that right now. The only winger who seems to understand how to play with Nick Voltemada is Jacob Murphy, who should have started that game. And he should have started against Benfica as well as Lewis Miley, in my opinion. Jacob Ramsey came on. Nice energy there. Still obviously trying to get back to fitness after he was clattered by Sean Longstaff. Cheers for that, Sean. But he's another player who can add something to this team with his dynamic running, his ability to get in and around the target man in the shape of Nick Voltemada and get into the box and get goals and maybe score from distance as well. But there's a major creativity problem right now with Newcastle United. We defend well. Pope's a good shot stopper. We defend well. Centre-halves are good. They can use the ball very well. We've got a big issue at full-back. Both our starting full-backs are injured. Eddie Howe has to make that call when they're both fit, that it's out with the old and in with the new. Livramento on the right, Hall on the left. No dicking around. No fucking around. Dan Burn either plays at centre-half or left-back. He does not play. He either plays at centre-half or he doesn't play at all, in my opinion. He doesn't play left-back if Lewis Hall's fit. Lewis Hall plays left-back. That needs to be a decision that Eddie Howe makes. There's decision number 1 when they're fit. Right now, he's off the hook because neither one of them are fit until the next national break. The next one, the big one, he's not off the hook at. You need to change this midfield, Eddie Howe, and you need to change it right fucking now. Outside of Bradford, Joelinton has been terrible this season so far. He was poor in pre-season as well. We haven't seen the Joelinton that we're used to. We haven't seen the beast getting in people's faces and flooring them and winning the ball back and getting into the box and getting goals. We haven't seen that player. I don't know whether it's injuries that are slowing him down or whether it's just fatigue or age or whatever, or maybe people have figured out how he plays and he has to adapt his game. But if Newcastle are going to continue to have more of the ball against teams, Joelinton cannot play in those games. When we're playing Arsenal, Manchester City, Barcelona even, Liverpool, where we're not going to have the ball and they're going to have the ball, by all means, Joelinton's the first name on a team sheet. Smash into players, set the tone, set the aggression, get the ball, win it back. Let's get the lads moving in the attacking third and try and create chances. Let's get them doing that, right? But when we're playing against a team who's going to sit in a deeper lying block, Joelinton is not the answer. He's not the answer. Not when you've got someone like Lewis Miley, who's 19 years old, who's already shown how good he is technically on the ball. The kid needs minutes. Let's not make the same mistake we made with Elliot Anderson here, where we've got a really talented young player who potentially may leave this football club and go on and become an England international because the manager insists on playing the same player even when the game does not suit his skill set. Let's not make that mistake again, Eddie Howe. Lewis Miley needs more minutes. He showed that when he come on. I thought he did excellent for the assist, running to the box. He looks like he's got a little bit more pace about his game as well. Maybe he's worked on that over the summer, in terms of his fitness and his training regimes. Jacob Ramsey's another one who can add a dynamic to that midfield. But Joelinton right now, for me, his starting spot in the starting 11, his position has to be under threat because he's not offering enough to justify a start in this team. I'll be really interested to see what Eddie Howe does against Benfica on Tuesday night, which I will be at. Mark will be on post-match for you. And also against Fulham, which I'll also be at. So you'll get double Mark this week because I won't be here because I managed to get 2 tickets for the game. So thank you to my generous buddies who gave me the tickets because I do like going to the games. I don't get to go as many these days because it is like gold dust getting the tickets. I've been very fortunate to go to 2 games in a week and I really, really appreciate that. But yeah, it's a real massive week for Newcastle United. In many ways, the Fulham game is a bigger game than Benfica because we have to start picking up points in the Premier League. And that's why, to me, things need to change. Now, if the midfield changes and evolves and turns into a midfield that uses the ball better, that can be better with the ball retention, can be more dynamic and cutting with that passing, maybe we see Anthony Elanga get into this game. Maybe it's because the midfield is flat at the minute, there's not a lot of creativity from it, that Anthony Elanga is not getting into the game. Or maybe it's just because Anthony Elanga isn't getting into the game himself. When he broke, he kind of shit the bed a little bit against Brighton. When he to be fair, he was clean pair of heels. If he just ran forward, no Brighton player was going to catch him. They would have took him down, got a red card and a penalty, or he might have had a chance to score a goal. And he shit himself. But the other time he broke, there was nobody up with him. And that's an issue as well. When you get runners in and around Nick Voltemade, going past them as well. Elanga's one of those runners, but then you have to bust a gut to get yourself into the box for Elanga to pick you out. And our lads aren't doing that in the minute. So maybe if the midfield changes and evolves and turns into a passing midfield, then Elanga might become more of a dangerous asset for us. But at the minute, he just seems to be a bit anonymous, and Jacob Murphy needs to come back in and start in that position. But the Fulham game is huge. If we don't start picking up points in the Premier League, home and away, you can forget about Champions League qualification this season. Realistically, if we're not top 8 by Christmas, I think the top 5 potentially, if the English teams do well this season, is going to be a pipe dream because Spurs have come back strong with Thomas Frank at the helm. They look like they're a real threat for the Champions League. Chelsea, again, are winning games, even if they're not playing well, are still winning games. And without Cole Palmer, he's still to come back, and that kicks them onto another level as well. So Newcastle United really need to start getting victories on the board, but we have to start using the ball better, being creative, cutting teams open, creating chances, and getting the best out of Nick Voltemade. I'm amazed he's got 4 goals already. He's almost kind of been starved of service, We beat teams that weren't particularly that good. We beat Forest, who sacked their manager the other day, whether you agree if that's harsh or not, but they sacked the manager. Wolves aren't fucking great either, so we beat them 2 teams in the Premier League. Couldn't beat Leeds away, who aren't a great side either. Yes, they've had some good results. We went in there so negative, where we should have been in there way more positive and got in their face and did something. But again, is that about changing the midfield and being able to get on the ball and pass and make things happen, which we don't do. So it's a real concern. I mean, Eddie Howe's got a lot of things that he needs to look at and big decisions to make, the midfield being the first one for me. I think Lewis Miley needs more game time. I think Joelinton needs to come out of this side when we're playing against teams that sit in a low block. And for me, both the teams we're playing next week will do that. Jose Mourinho will set his team up in a low block, playing for a draw or potentially nicking a 1-0 win at St James's Park. as will Marco Silva for Fulham. And Newcastle need to be able to cut those two teams open and get two results. It's a big week. Two big results can turn this back round for Newcastle United, but at the minute there's more questions than answers, and it is a little bit concerning. I'm not shouting anything about the manager. I think he's got more than enough credit in the bank to still have the backing of the majority of the fan base, which he does have. But if we don't start winning these games and he doesn't start rotating the squad and bringing in players who are better suited for fixtures, then there will be questions asked. But thanks for watching, guys. Keep it evermore as always. I will be back on with the match preview for Benfica and for Fulham, but Mark will be with you on post-match analysis. There'll be a few more opinion videos coming up through the week as well. Potentially a couple of, rumour has it, transfer videos. We've been linked to a couple of very tasty players, which actually could make our midfield even better. So check your eyes out for them as well, guys. I know you like the rumour has it videos. They'll be back soon. But thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Keep it evermore. Have a belter. I'll see you later. Cheers.
Eddie Howe's heroes celebrate. They have done it.